Here's the thing that God's going to do for you in heaven. God will, everything that happens in our life, things that we don't understand, things that seem to make no sense, suffering that we endured that seems to have no purpose, we know that God allows these things to happen. Nothing happens outside the scope of His providence. That means God had a reason to let it happen. Even our own sins, He does not cause, but He permits. Why? He's in control of everything, and He's only good. He only wills the good. Well, it's because He intends to bring out of these things some good that we don't currently see. Now, lots of times in human life, we'll go through some trial or difficulty, and at the end of it, we'll say, that was really tough, and didn't know why I had to go through it. Now it makes sense. Now I see the good that God intended to bring. You know, I mean, my buddy Bob, who's a quadruple amputee, lost all his limbs when he was about 9 years old. Horrible suffering. Years in rehabilitation hospitals. Yeah. I mean, you just wouldn't believe the stuff he's gone through. He looks back on that now and says, I know why God let that happen, because He's brought me to a much deeper place in my relationship with Him and others that I wouldn't have achieved without this particular path of suffering that He ordained for me, and not for somebody else, but for me. Sometimes we get that realization in this life. Often we don't. Especially horrific suffering we don't see. Okay? Keep in mind, though, that the horizon of our life and existence is eternity. And in comparison to an eternity of bliss in the beatific vision, St. Teresa of Avila once said, our worst sufferings will seem in heaven like one night in a bad hotel. All right, that in light of eternity and the bliss of heaven, nothing that we've suffered in this life will seem in heaven to amount to anything to us. And moreover, St. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 13 that we will know fully. We will know fully, even as we're fully known. Now, how does God know us? He knows us from the end to, from the beginning to the end. Yeah. He knows everything about our life and why it makes sense and what His plan for the story of our life is. We'll know all of that. And whatever we've suffered, however bad it seems in this life, the intelligibility, the unpacking of the mystery of evil will be made plain to us so that we can say with genuineness and a goodwill and trust, not even trust, it won't be trust because it'll be knowledge. It won't be something we have to take on faith. It'll be something we see intelligibly in our own intellects. That makes sense. I see why God allowed that. Thanks be to God. We'll be able to say that. Now that today we have to take that conviction on faith, trusting in God's word of promise. And that's difficult. That takes grace. That takes prayer. That takes reliance on the sacraments. In the next life, it won't take faith. I don't need faith to know that 2 + 2 = 4. I see it intelligibly in my own intellect immediately. That's how clear everything will be in the next life. And I'll be able to say, thanks be to God. I now know why that happened. And it all makes sense. And it really did all work out for the good.